The Prime Minister landing in Alice Springs as a violent crime wave peaks.
When they saw me, they said, "Give me the grog, give me the grog." I was just screaming.
In the last year, there's been a 54% increase in alcohol-related assaults. Shop break-ins and home invasions jumping by more than 50%. That spike coinciding with the federal government's intervention-era ban on alcohol sales expiring last July. Liquor becoming legal in some communities for the first time in 15 years.
We are seeing a spike, but a spike is like any tip of an iceberg, and underneath it there are entrenched issues that are the result of, years and years of failed public policy and failed investment.
Pressure mounting on the NT government to reimpose the booze bans. The federal opposition calling for the Defence Force to be deployed to the town.
The Prime Minister has the resources, has the ability, and should show the leadership to deal with this issue.
It's totally rich for Peter Dutton to come out having a say now when he was completely silent in his time in the Scott Morrison government.
I'm not sure that the imagery of Australian soldiers dealing with First Nations people in a way that sees them having to arrest them and place them in police vehicles and the like is the imagery that we really want for Australia.
Over the weekend, the NT Police suspended the alcohol licensing of 2 retailers in town in a bid to restore calm.
It's not as simple as just banning alcohol. We actually need to be looking at what is underneath it and ensuring that people have the ability to live their best lives. There's no point in working on one part of the problem because it won't go away.
But those who love their Alice Springs community just want help.
Crime is frightening and no one deserves to be a victim of crime. But at the same time, we need to understand that a lot of the children have been traumatised. I hope that we can come up with solutions that don't dehumanise our most vulnerable.
Jamie Chalker is the NT Police Commissioner and he joins us now. Commissioner, there's clearly some kind of correlation, it seems, between the spike in crime and the end of the alcohol ban. Do you think then, in that context, that ban should be reimposed?
Look, for a short-term measure, I think we've got to look at all things to just try and help recalibrate the town at the moment. I was down there last week from Thursday to Saturday. I walked the streets late on Thursday night. There are a lot of people who are from outside of Alice Springs who are visiting at the moment from as far away as Freegon in Dalkana in South Australia, Warrakoona and Kirrikara in Western Australia. Alice Springs at its heart is a service town for many remote Aboriginal communities, and with 2 significant weather events that saw many of our dirt roads impacted, a lot of people were caught up in Alice Springs, and unfortunately they've been caught up in the cycle of grog that's seen many of the antisocial behaviour issues come to the fore.
I should kind of acknowledge that this is tricky because you'll have your views from what you've seen on the ground about what should be done. The communities there will have their views, and they would probably note that here we are asking you, a white police commissioner, for his thoughts. Do you understand how people might bristle at just that whole situation?
Look, I'm fairly blessed. I'm born and bred in the Northern Territory and I've grown up here. I've gone through school here. I've spent more than half my policing career based outside of Darwin. I've lived and worked in remote Aboriginal communities, including Papunya and Kalkaringi. So I've seen the journey firsthand on the ground. I've got a lot of people who I hold very dear who are Aboriginal, as I do from all sorts of backgrounds in the Northern Territory. So I feel that we come from a pretty good place. We're very involved in people's lives in the Northern Territory, unfortunately. It's a harsh reality that the involvement of police in many families in the Northern Territory due to alcohol-related harm and family and domestic violence is fairly present. But to all of the communities that we tend to visit, they all ask for us to continue our presence there. Certainly when I was walking the street on Thursday night, I engaged with nearly 100 odd people, all quite keen to come up and have a chat, which is including the youth on the street. Gave me a pretty good idea that people were just simply in town waiting to return home, had been there for a myriad of reasons, from health-related services to access to Services Australia, a whole range of issues, and ultimately we were urging them to head home. But, from their lens, a lot of them were probably having fun. Notably, there wasn't too many Alice Springs residents among that group.
Commissioner, you mentioned before that cycle of grog abuse. Why do you think there is so much alcohol abuse within the Alice Springs community?
Well, it's not new, and I think we've got to acknowledge that. I mean, as I alluded to, I commenced service with the Northern Territory Police back in 1994 and was deployed to Alice Springs in the mid-part of 1995. back then, under a power that we have called protective custody, we were taking in excess of 150 plus people per Friday night into the watch house purely for detention due to their level of intoxication and no charge policy. So again, you know, we're talking back nearly 30 years ago, and here we are still at the moment with on-premises drinking occurring Monday through to Saturday. They're opening at 10 or 11 a.m. in the morning. The takeaway licensed premises open for trade at 2 p.m. and by 2:05, there's not a single patron left in those venues, but 300 people have spilled into the street from those two venues.
Wow.
It's an issue that has to go to the point of what is driving people to feel the need to consume alcohol to those harmful levels that is then spilling into violence and apprehension in community because of the behaviour that's associated.
It sounds like the question for generations, Commissioner. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Before we leave that story, I should point out, just moments ago, we learned the Prime Minister has announced something in relation to this, of course, visited today. He says a new body will be created to coordinate partnerships between the Territory and federal government. So the federal government will get involved, at least to that extent. And for a 3-month period, sales of alcohol will be restricted and limited to 1 purchase per day. So that doesn't seem to be as strict as the previous ban was, but clearly the government has decided to do something in the meantime. The real question will be whether or not you get to the stuff the Commissioner was talking to that's beyond his remit, that's beyond what the police can do, and that's really about the underlying causes of that. And no doubt there'll be a lot of arguments about what that is, but the puzzle can only be solved there, surely, at that level.
How do you dismantle 200 years of trauma, though?
I can't answer
it's
that.
no easy fix,
I can't
right?
answer
No
that.
one can.